Hi, I'm Charlotte and this is Tired Mama Tries to Read. So now I'm going to do some fiction reviews. I've just done a video of non-fiction reviews, which you should find below this one. The fiction ones, there's two that I was recommended that I would never have picked up on my own, and then two that were some ones that I treated myself to. So I'll start with the ones that are not like me to read. First one is of Besom Mist. It's by Erick Setiawan. I hope I've said his name right. And this came out in 2009, so my sister recommended this to me. She found it in a charity shop, so I got it secondhand. I don't know if you can get it new. I think it's a fairly unassuming cover. Nice, but it wouldn't necessarily have made me pick it up. The storyline is a young girl called Meridia flees from a house haunted by sad-eyed ghosts, her mother's resentments and swirling clouds of mist. She hopes to escape to a simpler future with a man she loves, but her new husband's home, plagued by swarms of angry bees, is just as bewitched and has its own history of thwarted passions, feuds and betrayal. Yeah, I loved it. I loved it and I'm so glad I read it because I don't read fantasy books, so it's probably one of the first fantasy books I've read in about 15 years, and that's not a joke. Maybe I should read more. I found it difficult at first to get into the way it's written, not the style, but the common fantasy elements, which, you know, when I was talking to my sister about it, she was like, yeah, that's just what happens. Things like the bees of the title, I couldn't work out whether they were real or metaphorical, and, you know, when you read it, you'll see what I mean. They are both there and not there within the narrative, and I just felt like it was a puzzle I had to solve, but actually it didn't matter. And the mist in question, similarly, wasn't sure if it was real or metaphorical. It didn't make a difference, which is why I shouldn't have worried. So it was an excellent story. I really loved the main female character. I thought she was strong, powerful, and she did what she wanted to do. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. There was a kind of feminist element to it, definitely, and also a lot about resentment in relationships and why not to let it build. So yeah, I thought it was really, really good, and I flew through it, so that's always a good sign. The second one is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine, which I imagine is a cover you recognise because it's everywhere, and I don't buy things that are everywhere because I don't know, partly I think I'm a bit of a book snob and I try really hard not to be, but I think I might still be. And the other thing is that I was unfortunate enough to be a bookseller during the days of the Da Vinci Code, and so I automatically lurch away from anything popular because of the negative feelings I have towards Dan Brown. So I shouldn't let him influence me in other readings, but I obviously do. So if people generally tell me you've got to read this, I just go, no, I don't want to. But my lovely friend Dee told me to read this, and she's very wise. So I did read it, and it was really, really, really good. I loved it. It was the premise is that Eleanor Oliphant leads a simple life. She wears the same clothes to work every day, eats the same meal for lunch, and buys the same 2 bottles of vodka to drink every weekend. Eleanor Oliphant is happy. Nothing is missing from her carefully timetabled existence, except sometimes everything. Yeah, I wasn't really sure what to expect, but Eleanor Oliphant is a really original character, I thought, and the dialogue, which is largely how you get to know her, is so funny and dark and unexpected. Yeah, I laughed out loud on numerous occasions, which doesn't happen very often. I didn't cry, even though I found it really, really moving. I don't often cry in books, and I didn't in this one. But I know a lot of people have, so I would imagine it would make that happen. It's not too gooey. The plot, as it moves forward, you think, oh, okay, I know how this is going to go. But it doesn't actually go quite the way you think. And it covers enough ground in between to be worthwhile. So it covers loneliness, relationships, having families, all things like that. It's really beautiful. I definitely, as you can get it, I think you should always buy from an independent bookseller. But in this instance, as it's so cheap in the supermarkets, it's definitely worth a gamble. And then the last 2 books are my treats, which are so pretty. And the first one is Asymmetry by Lisa Halliday. Gorgeous cover. Really lovely 2-tone cover with a sort of vintage picture in New York and then these couples sitting on a bench. It's split into 3 parts. Part 1 is about publishing. Well, she's not an editor, I don't think. She works in publishing, Alice, and she has a relationship with a much older man who is also a famous writer. The second part is a young man, Omar, who's caught up in a detention room in Heathrow Airport as he's trying to go from America to Kurdistan. And the third part is Ezra Blazer's Desert Island Discs, which is a really short, sort of almost transcription of a Desert Island Disc segment with Ezra Blazer, who is the writer from the very first part. Yeah, all 3 parts are really good. In fact, they're excellent. I don't really understand what they have to do with each other, and I kind of expected there to be some big link at some point, and there wasn't. So that's the only thing about it that I found a bit confusing, and it's, if I had to give it a number of stars, I give it 4 out of 5. But if I knew for certain there wasn't meant to be any links, then I'd probably up it to 5, because it was totally enjoyable as it was. The writing style was incredible. I can't believe it was written by one person. The first part about the affair between the writer and the publisher is almost all in dialogue, and it's really well done. You love the characters, you know them, you're very involved. The second part, with Omar in the airport, is nearly all reflection upon his life. So no dialogue, virtually none. It's nearly all just sort of internal thoughts. Very moving. Lots of it set in Baghdad, lots of it set in America. Yeah, really contemporary issues. Very, very well done. Can't quite believe it's been written by somebody who isn't from that background. And it says in here, Lisa Halliday grew up in Massachusetts and lives in Milan. So it doesn't say that she's got any experience of living in Baghdad or anything like that. But it reads incredibly well. So she must have done a lot of research or have connections in some way. And the third part is lovely. It's funny and light. The Desert Island Discs bit is a real sort of almost like it's like when you have a sorbet in a big long meal. It's much lighter than the first 2 parts, so it does kind of ease you down from those bits. But I was expecting by the third part I was going, right, okay, now it's all going to make sense. And it doesn't. That doesn't really bother me, but it might bother you. So, yeah, I might have to do some Googling to see what other people think, because maybe they've put some connections together that I didn't. Last book, Sight by Jessie Greengrass. Amazing. My favourite one. Of all the books I've read, I would recommend this the most. About a pregnant woman who is thinking about life, motherhood, children, happiness, relationships, science, humanity. I mean, everything you could think of, and it's only it's not even 200 pages. It's really, really well done. The prose is incredible. I can't think of a writer I've read in a really long time where I've been so captured by the way they write. I mean, I love it when writers write well. I won't read a book if I pick them up and they're clunky. I just can't. That's half the reason I don't do crime and things like that. It's because they're so often, I don't know what the editors are doing, but they just read really badly. But, you know, this is just like, I'll read you a little bit about when she's reflecting on being away from her daughter. I wonder what it says about me that I seem to feel love only in absence, that present I recognise only irritation, a list of inconveniences, the daily round of washing and child teas, the mundanity of looking after, and beyond this the recollection of what went before, and how nice it was to be free. But I didn't recognise my freedom then, or wasn't free, since freedom only functions as an opposite to constraint. There were other things then, and how can I say now that a different choice would have left me more content, and that I would not have felt the loss of this life, as now I feel the loss of that one. Amazing. Yeah, it's very much reminds me of Plath, this idea of once you choose one thing, all the others disappear. She's definitely questioning the importance of motherhood, despite being a pregnant narrator. There's a big question as to whether it does make your life better, whether it is for everybody. I definitely think that my friends who don't want children would be able to relate to a lot of the narrative. I don't think it's a mumsy book, although there are portions on there about motherhood, like that bit I just read you, where it's really raw. I mean, she really gets right to the centre of it, this idea of losing the life before. It's half the reason I started doing this vlog, is the idea of losing the person you were before. So yeah, an awesome book. It was shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction, so I'm almost tempted to try and get every book on that list to find out why on earth this didn't win. Yeah, that concludes what is a fairly hefty pile of books. I do not normally read that many. Probably I'll be reviewing one book next time, but the next video will probably be after payday, where I will have some new ones. So I shall get back to you when I've had